What's up, YouTube? Tenton here, and today, based off your suggestions in my recent poll, we will be discussing my top 10 most requested fights for Death Battle. Just a reminder that if you want to help decide what videos I do next, subscribe and look out for the next poll. Anyway, moving on to why you're actually here, this list will be based on the following criteria: how much I personally want the fight, my connection to the characters, how fair I think the fight is, and finally, based on how likely they are to actually happen. A dream fight can be cool to discuss, but I like to base my list off some form of reality. With that being said, let's get the list started.
So we back in the creeper. Oh man.
If you know me, you'd know I was in the demographic of kids that Minecraft was released for. When it came to Xbox back in 2011, I played the absolute crap out of it. And to this day, I still keep up with the game's updates and play it every now and again. It's one of the few games that even 10 years later is still so beloved to me. Naturally, Steve has grown on me as well. From him getting into Smash to his place in meme culture. This blocky boy has stuck with me, and if I had to give him an opponent on a death battle, I'd pair him against the Terraria Man. The fight's connections are that both characters are the protagonists of blocky games about building and adventuring. The games also have a long rivalry. I want this fight for the sheer creativity. Imagine Steve pulling out potions, tipped arrows, ender pearls, his trident, sword, bow, crossbow, and all the other weapons and items at his disposal. And then there's the Terraria Man's dozens and dozens of guns, magical artifacts, ancient weapons, not to mention they can both fly, so we can have an epic sky fight. From what I hear, the winner is debatable, and it really depends on what you buy for both. Steve is likely stronger due to his theoretical max inventory full of golden blocks, and Steve can technically react to lightning strikes. Meanwhile, the Terraria Man is more durable and has a much larger arsenal. I placed this fight last due to me just being less familiar with the Terraria Man as a whole. My entire exposure to Terraria consists of PBG's hardcore series on it, and I have never played the game directly. But if this fight was to happen, I'm sure it would eventually build its way into my favorite list of episodes.
You! I'm getting real sick of green people.
At number 9, we have one of the remaining matchups from my Season 2 bucket list. Back when Death Battle was just getting started, this fight was a huge request, and while it's certainly mellowed over the years, it's still a matchup I like quite a lot. I grew up with both Dragon Ball Z and the Justice League cartoon, so I'm rather fond of both characters. I definitely prefer Piccolo, but John's cool. The matchup is fitting enough, two green alien men from insanely popular shows. The reason this fight is so low is just because, well, to be blunt, the fight is almost guaranteed just to be our standard cape shit fight. And the outcome is beyond obvious. Even with his Dragon Ball Super buffs, Piccolo is nowhere near powerful enough to contend with the Martian Manhunter. This is a character who is debatably stronger than Superman. Sure, they can both regenerate and read minds, but John has far more experience using both powers, and his versions also are just way more potent in what they can do. Martian Manhunter is going to win, and Piccolo in the fight will just use the standard Dragon Ball character stuff of flying, punches, ki blasts. Sure, he has his stretchy limbs, the Hellzone grenade, his unique strategic outlook, and the special beam cannon will likely all be used, but besides that, Piccolo is a pretty standard character in Versus. As much as I love the fight, and as much as I would love to see it, I must admit it's one of my tamer choices. The next fight, however, is anything but.
Oh, you don't know? Well then, human garbage, let me tell you!
If you've seen my recent videos, you would know I've fallen in love with the visual novel series Danganronpa. I love the casts, I love the mystery surrounding each game, and I love me some good old-fashioned murder mystery. While I love all three games, I'm of the opinion that Danganronpa 1 did it the best. Not only does it have the largest living cast, but I'd argue they're the best cast of livers in the entire series. Spoilers for one of those livers. If you are planning to play the game, leave now. You'll be spoiled in 3, 2, 1. Toko Fukawa, aka Genocide Jill, is easily my favorite character in the series when it comes to one-liners. She's great in the anime, great in the games, great in Ultra Despair Girls, everything. Toko's depressed and gloomy nature being juxtaposed by Jill's over-the-top and crazy mind is just amazing to watch play out on screen. While Toko isn't my favorite girl from her respective cast, that right goes to a certain aquatic angel, she is certainly my number 2. After finishing the game and learning Toko has a whole spin-off game where she shares the main character role, I must admit, I was hooked to see how this would play out. The game also thankfully gives her feats that make her viable for Versus. When deciding an opponent for her, it only took one quick Google search to find it. The guys behind 1 Minute Melee already did a killer episode on the fight, and I'd love to see the Death Battle team work on it. My only concerns are that the sprite quality for both are not that great, so the team might have to make some custom sprites, and I'm not sure if they would be willing to do that for two lesser-known series. Much less My Hero Academia, though Himiko isn't exactly a character that's dying to be on Versus, so I guess that's still fair. Danganronpa, while certainly popular, in fact the game has actually had quite a resurgence in the last 2 years, is still not a crazy well-known series. To be fair, neither Elfen Lied or Afro Samurai are that popular, but still, Death Battle at the end of the day is a show with a budget, and they need to make smart budgeting decisions. Another issue is that Genocide Jill's kit isn't the most varied. She throws scissors, wields scissors, tases people with her taser, she can make it rain scissors, she can give people bad haircuts that somehow hurts them, and she can throw a scissor spirit bomb. Meanwhile, Toga just has her knife, can copy Jill's appearance, and has the blood tube thing that she can stick into people. It certainly has enough to make a full fight. Heck, the 1 Minute Melee team did a fantastic job, but they certainly don't have a crazy amount of abilities. In terms of who wins, Jill casually beats Monokumas, who were able to terrify Nekomaru into not fighting them on principle. And Nekomaru can destroy a couple city blocks by taking a shit. No, I am not kidding. We have seen that the standard Monokumas can match Sakura, who is arguably the strongest human being on the planet. Jill also can't even be hurt by these Monokuma's attacks. She's also fought a skyscraper-sized Monokuma and held onto a vehicle going at escape velocity. She's also tanked multiple explosions like they were nothing. Meanwhile, Toga can scale to the other My Hero Academia characters being lightning timers, but she can't really scale to many of the physical feats due to her never directly fighting any of the series' heavy hitters. She tends to either be stealthy or simply fight weaker foes. She was notably overpowered by Ochako of all people. So stats-wise, Jill is notably stronger and more durable, but Toga is way faster. The fight would really come down to whether Jill could hit her and outlast her arsenal. Based on my notes, I think Jill's sheer durability and strength would be enough to win out. This is my dream match. I might rank other fights higher, but this would be the match to blow me away if it ever happened. I used to think a Danganronpa character being on the show was impossible, but if recent episodes have told me anything, it's that anything can happen. If you beg enough, a single person can get an episode to happen. Your only mate is living proof of that.
Why do you do this? You're so stupid! Stupid, stupid, stupid! Oh, and let's not forget, you're so stupid!
This fight is a second on my bucket list from Season 2. I grew up with both Dexter's Lab and Jimmy Neutron, so I'd love to see both boy geniuses duke it out in a fight. It's been years since I've seen either of the series, so I'm unsure who wins, but the potential for the gadgets in this fight alone sells me on it. Dexter in his power suit or mechs, Jimmy with his crazy inventions like the Hypno Gun would be fun to see, Goddard would obviously have to be there along with Dexter using one of his wrenches, plus you gotta have a brain blast. It's kind of refreshing not to know who I think wins, and I'd love to see this longtime request be done. I used to think it was impossible, but Death Battle in recent years has really branched out to Western cartoons and animation with Samurai Jack, Ben 10, Danny Phantom, Jake Long, Steven Universe, Star Butterfly, Poe, Aang, Zuko, and Korra all being used. I think Jimmy vs. Dexter is actually likely now, and even though these two characters have certainly fallen off with me over the years, I'd love to see a Death Battle re-spark my love for both shows.
Kaboom!
Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
In a similar theme to the last fight, we have Skipper the Penguin versus
A teenage girl? Patty the teenage girl?
Actually, he's a platypus. They, in this case, do a lot. Both of these characters are secret agents that pretend to be normal animals in the eyes of the public. Both are the best agents of their respective teams/agencies, and both were from popular shows that aired from the late 2000s to the early 2010s. Skipper in recent years has become such a meme character, so hearing Skipper's banter alone will sell me on this episode. He and the rest of the Penguins are legitimately the best part in the Madagascar movies, and Perry is just a treat to watch. For a silent protagonist, he works really well, and him and Doof play off each other fantastically. In terms of who wins, I'm unsure. Skipper has more notable feats from my knowledge, but Perry has a way better track record with 1v1 fights, and Perry has more combat experience overall, though Skipper has certainly dealt with a larger variety of situations. Meanwhile, Perry mostly just fights only Doof, and Perry does have a bad habit of getting trapped. Regardless of a winner, I want them to use the environment constantly throughout the fight. I want them to do a hand-to-hand fight, and I'd love to see the fight take place on a ship or some kind of underground base. You can have the fight start with both of them coming to the location on a mission, and they spot each other and think they're an agent from a rival company, and then you could have them fight over the intel they're looking for, like in Snake vs. Sam. You can even have the other penguins, Major Monogram, and Carl on the comms to provide extra banter. This episode is just full of potential and will likely be a ton of fun, and the most memeable fight since Ben vs. Hal. If you hate this matchup, well, I've only got one thing to say to you. Curse you, YouTube commenters!
Kicking? Oh, I want to do some kicking!
Do it again.
Why, you? Why?
You guys know I'm a Persona nerd. I got a whole video if you're interested to see some of the fights from that series, but this one holds a very special place for me. Chie represents my favorite type of character. I love me an underdog, and her whole arc in the game hit me pretty hard. I personally know what it's like to feel bad for being different, to question if there's something wrong with you for not fitting in or acting like other people your age. Even to this day, that fear still occasionally pops into my mind. So when playing the game, I embraced her tomboyish nature and her fun-loving personality. Chie just has a certain energy to me. Whenever she's on screen, I'm enjoying myself. The Persona series is one of those few gaming series that I can just play with nothing else on. Those games just have an influence on me that no other game has. Me being a writer and all, I always tend to love the most complex characters in their cast. I love Toko, Futaba, Lysithea, and Chie is no different. Though you can definitely argue that she is not the deepest character in her respective game, but still. This fight, unlike the rest, sells me on it because quite frankly, Chie's in the fight, and that's all I want from it. I want to see my favorite character for one of my favorite games portrayed well, and I want to see her win. To be blunt, my favorite episodes of Death Battle usually feature my preferred character winning. I obviously want the episodes to be accurate and correct above everything else, but it just makes me a bit happier to see a character I love win. That's why I love Kirby vs. Boo and Gara vs. Toph. Episodes that have problems, but I overlook it because two characters that mean the world to me won. Obviously, I still love the episodes where my preferred character lost, but seeing them win and hearing Wiz and Boomstick hype them up adds a little extra special something to that. It feels like a validation of my interest in these characters. This episode for me, honestly, is fighting for the #1 slot. Persona is a series that the Death Battle cast has shown interest in bringing back. They've done a Death Battle cast on this specific episode, and Chad has shown his love for Chie in some of the previous top 10s they used to do on the channel. The fight might just happen next year, but my one issue with this match is that Mako is essentially being sent here to die. And I definitely want her to lose instead of watching Chie die, but I can't help but feel bad that a character I know people like will just die so my character can shine. It feels oddly selfish of me, and I don't really like that. Chie has a huge stats advantage, and her persona gives her much more versatility, plus she arguably has more experience and is better trained. The fight's a total stomp in Chie's favor, but then again, seeing the two of them banter and watching their fighting styles go at it would be fun to watch. The fight has me torn. I want it a lot, but if it happens, I want to make sure Mako gets just as much love as Chie does, because from what I've seen, she is a funny character who deserves some praise. Long story short, Chie is best girl, and if this fight happens, I'm going to cry sweet tears of joy watching Chie galactic punt Kill la Kill into a losing streak.
I am not Toph. I am Melon Lord.
Continuing on from the last entry, Toph has a long-running history with me. I grew up watching Avatar as it was airing. I was 8 when the show ended, and my little 8-year-old self absolutely loved Toph. Toph really started my love for that archetype of character. She is loud, funny, insanely skilled, and even a tad bit sensitive. Her fighting style is just so cool. It's purely reactionary and defensive. Toph waits, listens, and uses her seismic sense to predict and counter a foe's movements. Toph truly embodies the core fundamentals of earthbending, and it's just so cool to watch play out. Toph is the type of character that steals every scene she's in, and she is the perfect example to do a character with a disability. Toph takes her problem and embraces it. She learns to see in her own way, a quite frankly, better way in my opinion. Sure, it still has its flaws, but Toph proves that the little blind girl people thought was nothing is nothing but an assumption. So yeah, I love Toph, and after seeing her fight with Gara, I wanted to see her get a more modern analysis. She has lightning scaling from Aang and Zuko, and she has plenty of building to small town level feats to pull from. Heck, she kicks the new Avatar's butt in Korra. As for her opponent, well, there was only really one option. Terra from DC Comics. Both are Earth-manipulating girls from famous cartoons. Both have sass to spare, and they both, despite their hardened shells, have a soft spot deep down. From what my notes say, Toph has far more experience and is likely better trained. But considering Terra is a DC character, I'm sure she at least has one BS feat that will help her win. But as far as I can tell, I think Toph might just win. And wouldn't that be something for one of my favorite characters to finally break DC's over 150 episode streak of only losing to Marvel characters? As Toph herself would say,
Yeah, let's break some rules! Persona!
I'm a Persona nerd that has only recently fallen in love with Danganronpa, so you can guess where this is going. Teddy versus Monokuma is a fight I've discussed in the past in my Persona video, but I had yet to play Danganronpa 1, so I was only going off surface level stuff for Monokuma. After playing the game, my thoughts and wants for the match have changed. For starters, Teddy's win is going to be a lot harder. Monokuma, as mentioned before, scales to Nekomaru, and should be way physically stronger than what I listed him previously. In the fight, Teddy will likely have to contest with a lot of Monokumas rather than just one. I still think Teddy wins, but it's way closer. I previously explained why I want the fight, so instead I've come up with an entire concept for the battle. The fight would likely take place in Hope's Peak Academy with Teddy roaming the halls. We could have Monokuma greet him, and he could explain that he kidnapped Teddy, who would currently be in his human form, to participate in a killing game. Teddy naturally would object due to his history with fighting a serial killer and start the fight. Monokuma, after being punched, would scream about him violating a school regulation and say how he was going to punish Teddy. The fight then could begin proper. We could have Teddy on his own barely beating on Monokuma, and then have him start to get attacked by multiple. Maybe have the different variants from Ultra Despair Girls, and then we can have Teddy bust out his persona and start destroying them. Then we can have Teddy working his way through the building looking for Junko, wiping out Monokumas as he does it. For the climax, he bursts into Junko's final courtroom, and we see Junko commanding a massive horde of Monokumas charging Teddy. Then, based off who wins, we can either have Teddy use a big energy blast like he does in the Persona fighting games to kill Junko, and Monokuma by blasting them into space, ending the fight on him staring out of the hole in the roof with sunlight coming down, signaling that Hope defeated this despair. On the opposite side, we could have him getting overwhelmed by Monokumas, then we cut to a bruised and exhausted Teddy tied down in a custom-made execution that Junko came up with after she knocked him out. It could play off Teddy's bear-like nature, the fact he's a pervert, or his fear of being alone. Any of those three ideas work, regardless of which we end the execution with Teddy's body in full display, with the body discovery announcement blaring. Then we transition to Junko sitting on her throne in the shadows, holding a Monokuma with an evil grin on her face, showing that despair has won and Teddy's hope is dead. I love this concept, I love both series, and if this fight ever happens, I pray this is how it's done.
My friends.
Every last one of them!
This entry is going to be a bit different. This fight is the third of my bucket list fights, but the context has changed over time. I originally wanted this fight to be Guts versus Ike from Fire Emblem, but in recent years, Three Houses has come out and most people agree that Dimitri would be a much more fitting opponent for Guts. I am indifferent to which one of these two fights Guts. All I know is I want one of them to fight Guts. The theme of the fight is two medieval protagonists that have suffered a great loss and use that loss to fight on against the world. Guts lost all his friends thanks to Griffith. Meanwhile, Ike had to watch his father die, and Dimitri not only had to watch his father be decapitated, he had to watch his school be destroyed by his stepsister, and then be sentenced to death by his own country, only to escape thinking he got both his best friend and Professor killed. The fight's thematic, but Dimitri's loss certainly hits harder and fits the theme better. I simply like Ike more as a character. I'd love to see Guts' sword clash with Dimitri's lance. Guts' cannon arm and his super mode with his armor would also be cool to see. Guts and Dimitri should be around mountain level, but Dimitri can dodge lightning, so he's way faster. I think the fight between them would be close, and I'd be curious to see who would take it. Plus, imagine the track. A mix of Berserk music with Fire Emblem sounds too amazing to pass up. Ike vs. Guts, I must admit, is much less interesting. Ike has the same lightning feats, but he literally killed a goddess. And he can take hits from her, a being who could affect all of Tellius with her power. She is at bare minimum continental and can even be scaled to a world-ending level of power. So Ike should win that fight much easier. Not to mention he can heal with Aether, and his sword's energy attacks would be way more useful at a distance compared to cannons and arrows. I think Dimitri vs. Guts is a better match, but I loved Ike too much not to include him in the discussion. Regardless of which is done, I want an epic fight featuring one of my favorite Fire Emblem lords. That and getting a Fire Emblem related episode at all would make me happy. It's only been 8 seasons, Ben!
What is a king to a god?
And what is a god to a non-believer?
Vegeta vs. Thor is my honorary number 11. Both fighters are previous combatants and could certainly use another episode. And I'd love to see the banter between the two. Vegeta having to avoid Thor's hammer throughout the entire fight would be great, and the planetary level of destruction would be crazy to see. It's a cape shit fight, but it's a darn good cape shit fight at that.
In that case, Woozy Winks, by the power I've invested in me, to the Plaz Cave!
I love Plastic Man, and I'd love to see him get an episode. But Mr. Fantastic feels like a meh opponent for him. Sure, they both have stretchy arms, they're both superheroes from Marvel and DC, but in terms of character, one is a goofball comic relief guy, and the other is a super genius. So I think pairing Plastic Man against Luffy, however, would be way more fun. Luffy's personality and color scheme match Plastic Man's way better, and Luffy's power set has enough different stuff to make the fight more dynamic. Plus, One Piece could use another episode, and it would be another anime character fighting a DC character. Just imagine the sweet amount of controversy and rant videos we would get if Luffy lost, which he probably does lose in all honesty. A salt mine this big is just too tempting to ignore.
Froggy, Froggy, Froggy.
Greninja is my favorite Pokemon, even more than Snorlax, so seeing him on the show is a very big want of mine. But as for his opponent, well, I've never played Rivals of Aether, and while Rano is certainly cool, I have no interest with him, and I hear Greninja stomps, so it's not even all that close. This is a Chie versus Mako situation, but I know even less, and while I would still love to see this, Rano being Greninja's opponent really holds it back for me, simply because I know literally nothing about the character.
It's high noon.
This fight is a big request of a buddy of mine, so I thought I'd include it. Aaron Black vs. McCree, a fight between two popular cowboys from a cast of characters whose primarily job is fighting. Both are from recent video games, both have a fun, cocky attitude, and both wield the greatest killing device ever built by man, the gun. Well, I mean, technically car crashes have killed more people despite only existing for a third of the time that guns have. But I digress. They're Southern, and they have guns! The jokes write themselves! It didn't make the list just because I have really no personal connection to either, but it's still cool and I hope it happens.
Well, guess I'll see you inside. Bye.
Holy whoa, I just talked to a girl!
This one is just like Greninja's episode. I love Ochako and I would love to see her in a fight, but I know literally nothing about Gravity Rush and Cat. From what I hear, Cat has way more abilities and control of gravity, but Ochako has better stats, so the winner is kind of debatable. If the fight happens, I want to see them nail Ochako's sweet personality and have her use her super from the My Hero Academia fighting games. I feel they should hold off on this episode until she gets more material to work with, since Ochako's kit is rather basic and her story is still ongoing. After those issues are resolved, however, I'd be hyped to see this.
Damn. Hey, would somebody turn me around? We messed up my entrance. You know, I need to get this thing motorized. Hey! I tend to process traumatic events with dad jokes.
If you have watched a single video of mine, you knew this was coming. I've memed this on my channel for over a year now. It's Ant-Man vs. the Atom, my last and most wanted bucket list fight. I want to see these two tiny men duke it out in the best remaining Marvel vs. DC matchup that is yet to be done. Imagine the choreography. They could have the fight happen on another fight from a previous episode, or have them start normal and then start transitioning to being small, then have them go giant, and then have the two compete to see who can keep shrinking and who can keep getting even smaller and smaller until one of them can't see the other one anymore. And then they can have the winner pull a Thanos and have them grow from the inside of the other opponent, turning them into mush. This fight is a classic request, and a long time one at that. It's one of my dream matchups, and I've requested it for nearly a decade at this point. Ironically, I've started to want it even more after making it a meme on my channel. I'm not overly connected to Ant-Man or the anime at all, but I am connected to you guys, my audience who has supported me and been with me for so long. I've been doing this for nearly 3 years now, and I'm happy that my channel has finally gotten some momentum. I look forward to seeing where this goes, and I hope this video was entertaining. I look forward to the day that this fight gets confirmed, but I'm even happier to know that I have an audience who cares enough about me to listen. So thank you for all the recent support. This has been Ten Ton. Peace.